shoot. It's trying to go live. 1 second. All right.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary Phillips with Vim Products.
I'm Steve Gerby. How you doing today?
Today we're going to go through a Vim level entry shower pan installation. The area that you see here is the area that we'll be installing. We've done a little bit of prep work ahead of time. We've mixed some thin set. We've partially pre-cut our pan, and just in an effort to save some time. So this video isn't going to be all that long. We'll go ahead and get started, and we hope you enjoy the installation. So here's our pan. As you can tell from the recessed area in the floor, this isn't going to be a full-size pan installation. So with our pan, you can cut this in any shape or size that you need to. So we've taken roughly about 7 inches off of this side. We've started taking 7 inches off of this side, and we're going to finish the cut. We just wanted you to be able to see how it cuts with a skill saw. So you see on the Vim pan, there's already recessed areas for your perimeter screws. We had to cut the edges off of this side, so we've gone back in and pre-drilled from the bottom side of the pan through a thickened area of the pan so that we can come up on the top side and do our countersink. So we left one hole here to do. We wanted you to be able to see how to do it. So we're just going to locate our hole that we drilled from the bottom side and just hit it real quick with our countersink. When you countersink these and you screw it in, you don't want your screw to be up above the surface of your pan, because when we do our liquid waterproofing in our fabric, that fabric can tend over that screw. So you want to make sure your screw is down below the top surface of the pan. So we're going to go ahead and dry fit this just to make sure everything fits.
Making sure around the drain, that 8-inch hole that we cut there, that it doesn't hang up anywhere. The other thing I want to try and do before we install this pan is we want to check to see how level the subfloor is. So if we have to compensate by putting our pan in, we know what we're going to be compensating with thin set or wedges. And this subfloor is real good, so we're good on that. So I guess the next thing we're going to do is just going to flip this pan over right in front of it.
So when the Vim pan gets set, it gets set into a latex modified thin set. So what Steve's going to do now, he's going to butter back the back of the pan, just fill these waffle recesses with thin set. And then we'll put a small layer down in the recessed subfloor area, and we'll marry the two together. If the floor wasn't perfectly level, we would add a little bit more thin set to that area. And when we screw our pan down, we won't screw it down flush to the subfloor. We'll leave it up in that thin set and compensate so that we know that our pre-sloped pan is going to have perfect slope to the drain. So throughout this installation, you're going to see this trowel that Steve is using. This is the first time we're announcing this, but this trowel will be available probably in about another 2 weeks or so. It's got angled corners in it, which really helps aid for getting your slopes into your corners, because you can fit that trowel right into the corner areas.
fill my pan with thin set, I try to keep this last row as clean as possible so it doesn't squeeze out. So I'm not having to clean it around, because after this process we're going to do a patch material that dries really quick. And because that's going to dry quick and this is going to dry slower, I want to keep these end areas clean so I don't get the two chemical reactions drying at different times. So now I'm just going to skim the bottom of this real quick so I get 100% done. Okay, we're just going to take this pan, flip it back over.
Drop it back in first.
Yeah.
So the pan's going to be heavy with this thin set in it. So what we do is we drop the back section in first, and then we just fold it down to us. Because the pan is pretty sloped, the center area around the drain is going to be pretty much right on the subfloor. So we want to go ahead and just make sure that that's down. You'll notice that there's 4 screw holes right here around the drain. We want to get those screw holes and suck that pan right down tight so that we make sure that the pan maintains its slope.
We have a question from a watcher. Can this system be used with Open Web Floor Joists?
Absolutely. Because the Vim system never goes down past the top of the joist or the engineered truss or the eye joist, the framing is a little bit different than, we didn't really get into the framing here today, but you can see how that's done on our website. But absolutely, this is new construction, so the framers, we actually had them do the lowering floors, and that really saves a lot of time on the installation, but all framers can lower it. If anybody has questions on eye joists or engineered trusses, they can certainly call our technical support, and we'll help guide them through that process. So now Steve's going to go ahead and screw down the center 4 holes first. And we'll make sure that that pan is down tight right through the subfloor.
Okay, we have another battery.
Yeah. Level.
Yeah. Take this and put a team. It's not doing dark.
Come in here and get the picture of this level. Right on the top. So you see our pan is just a little bit out of level. So what we're going to do is we're going to be real careful when we screw this down. We want to make sure that this pan goes in perfectly level. It's actually not too bad. So that when it hardens up, the 1/4 inch per foot slope that's built into the pan is maintained.
question. Are you using stainless steel screws?
No, the screws don't have to be stainless steel. Because the whole pan is going to be covered with fabric and waterproofing, no water will actually ever reach those screws. Sometimes it's inevitable. You're going to have a screw that's going to be above the top of the pan. That's okay. Don't worry too much about it. You can always come back with a grinder and grind it down after it sets up. I can get this one down a little bit more, but I just want to bring that to everybody's attention.
Looks perfect.
So we've intentionally hung a clock in the corner here. You know what time we started? About 11:05?
Yep.
So that we can show that how fast the system can go. Now we're doing a 2-man installation. We've had some stuff pre-cut, so it's going to go a little bit faster. Not all that much.
Next step is our cement board. Doesn't matter what board, whatever board you want to use, Durock, Permat, Hardy Plank, Hardy board. What I do is I'll just take a sheet and I'll cut it down right down the middle, so it's 18 inches, back to the edge up, and that's going to go right around through.
Where did I drill, Steve?
I didn't take any.
Where's this screw bit?
Okay, so we're going to screw these in, and the reason we stay 18 inches high is so the inspector, any other work with valves or anything that has to be in, they can work behind it, and the inspector can also see for insulation and other things like that. So we'll go ahead and screw these in. And
so you'll notice that our pan doesn't go all the way back to the wall here. That's intentionally. We could have probably gone back a little bit farther, but it makes lowering the subfloor a lot easier if you don't go all the way to the bottom plate. So we're going to actually picture frame this. Once Steve gets the Durock up on the walls, we're going to take a sliver of 1/4 inch backer board, because that's what we're using on our bathroom floor. And we're going to picture frame all the way around the inside of the shower. And then we'll put a section of 1/4 inch backer board out here. So we've got a level plane from our subfloor and our bathroom floor all the way through our shower, so that we know that when our tile comes down the wall, we're going to have a level perimeter plane all the way around the inside of the shower.
I got those pieces pre-cut there, Garrett, if you want to put that. You want me to knock that?
Yeah, back and watch those.
I pre-cut these. They're about 1 inch wide. And they're just going to go around the perimeter like this.
So we have a question.
Yep.
Do you have any problems with using Schluter Curdy board versus Durock or Hardy?
The Schluter Curdy board?
Waterproof.
Yeah.
You can use that, but it's a waterproof board. So what we found, we've had a lot of people use it, but what we found is it takes a little bit longer for our liquid waterproofing that's supplied with our kit to actually dry, because you're putting a liquid over a waterproof product already. So whether it's Schluter or Go Board or whatever it might be, the Durock we found, and we're not trying to promote anybody over another company, but the Durock is a little more porous, so it actually soaks in that liquid waterproofing and gives a real good bond, and the dry time is a little bit faster.
These pieces now I'll just butter back. And I'm just going to lay these right around. Like Gary was saying before, because there's going to be 1/4 inch Durock out here. Steve, hold on. Since there's going to be 1/4 inch Durock out here on the main floor, well, we take our trowel and we're going to extend, this already has a 1/4 inch per foot pitch. We're going to extend that pitch right to that. So when the tile setter comes back in, he can actually have that first layer of tile will be perfectly level all the way around. There won't be any convex or any concaves. He'll have a perfect starting line, and the pitch will be continued. And it doesn't matter if we're using 1/4 inch and this shower is about 4 by 6. It doesn't matter if it's a 6 by 8 shower pan. You would use the whole pan, and then you just do your math. We're using 1/4 inch because we're only coming out another 6 inches. If we were going a foot that way, a foot this way, then we'd be using 1/2 inch Durock around the perimeter and 1/2 inch Durock on the floor. That allows us to continue that pitch. So it's one size fits all on the pans. And as long as you keep that math, you can add subfloor and Durock and bring the floor up to the pitch that you want it to be.
Other questions?
notice in this install, we've got a steel post over here. Wasn't something we were really anticipating, so we weren't prepared for it. After we waterproof this, we will come back in and use some self-tapping screws and go into this metal post just so this Durarock. We kind of locked it in with this piece for now, but we will come back in and secure this. That goes in?
Yes, please. Sorry. Talked about that extra thin set. I want to get that thin set out of there so my two dry at the same.
First?
Oh, I got you. Can do it. I'm sorry, which there?
Did this OS&D, it's waterproofing first. What? Yes, we do. before we add our patch material in here, because we have OSB on the floor, we're going to go ahead and hit it with just a thin coat of waterproofing first. That'll keep the wood from absorbing the water out of the patch prematurely. Just takes a real thin coat and it dries real quick. So we mentioned before about the 1/4" backer board picture framing out inside the shower. Our pan is 7/8 of an inch thick. So if uncut, when you set it into that 3/4" recess, you're about 1/8 of an inch above the existing subfloor. When you put the 1/4" backer board down, you can see here we're above, this level is above that level. And that allows us to extend the slope of the pan 6 inches all the way around using 1/4" backer board. If we want to make a larger shower, we can substitute that 1/4" for 1/2 inch. That'll give us 3/8 of an inch difference in height, which allows us to extend that slope 1.5 feet all the way around. So theoretically, you could build an 8 foot by 7 foot shower with the Vim system without having to cut or notch the floor joists or lowering trusses or anything like that. It's still maintaining that 1/4 inch per foot slope. So we're going to give this just a few minutes here to dry, and then we'll go ahead and get some patch mixed up and we'll start our sloping. Another thing that we've done, we've already pre-cut, and this isn't something just for the installation here. We always pre-cut our fabric so that we kind of stage it ahead of time, so when we get that patch down and that dries, then we're not trying to go back right before the waterproofing process. We've already got those pieces of fabric already pre-cut. We'll go ahead and install the drain now. So the Vim drain assembly here all comes in this box. Our drain itself actually attaches to the pan with 6 stainless steel screws. We give silicone with each drain kit that has to be put on the bottom of the drain assembly, fully coating this whole area here. You want to make sure you get around all the screw holes too. So we're just going to put it on here. And you want to make sure that you use this whole tube of silicone. Can't have too much of this. And you'll see when we set it into place, it's actually going to ooze out onto the pan. We want to get that back off the top of the pan surface before we start our waterproofing process. So I've coated the whole thing, but I'm going to continue to use every bit that's in this tube. Just to make sure I got really good thorough coverage on it. Now you notice on this drain, it's got some engagement tabs here. And what that does is it allows you to put the drain into the pan, simply rotate it. It's going to hit those engagement tabs, and that's automatically going to line your screw holes up for you. The kit comes with a set of big screws and little screws. The bigger screws are what hold the drain in place. You don't want to do this with a drill. You want to just do these hand tight and just make sure that they're snug. You'll also notice while I'm screwing these in that our pan has a texture to it. This was done intentionally as part of our mold process, and what that does is it helps create a chemical bond between the fabric and the waterproofing in our pan, So when that waterproofing and fabric dries, it's actually grabbing onto that texture of that pan. It creates a real strong bond. So hand tight is all you got to get these. Get hit one screw over here. Need to go down a little bit. So you see I've got a little bit of silicone that's oozing out here. We just want to go ahead and get that wiped off so it doesn't interfere with the liquid waterproofing. Our drain is a two-part process. This is our clamping flange. I just want to show how that does that same rotate and drops into place, but this won't go on until after our waterproofing and fabric is done. Unlike a tile PVC shower pan liner, this does nothing to seal the drain, so that when your fabric and stuff is done and this goes in, your weep hole channels stay wide open. So any water that should happen to get through your tile and hits that waterproofed surface, it's going to drain to the drain, and it's actually going to evacuate out of the drain. So these showers dry very, very quickly. Another thing that has been received real well is our strainer grate adapter. This is a two-part system that can actually be pulled apart. So if when you're tiling, for any reason you realize if you've got tile buttered up against this, you notice that your drain's a little too high or too low, this can actually be pulled apart, the thread's adjusted, and popped back into place. All right, we ready for some patch?
Yeah.
So our kits are sold two-way with two different waterproofing products. You can either use the Mape North American waterproofing, which we're using today, or it's also available with Laticrete's hydro barrier waterproofing. Because we're going with the Mape products here, we're going to use the Mape Quick Patch is our patch material. If we went with the Laticrete system, just to keep it all consistent, we would go with the Laticrete NXT patch.
And Gary, we did have another question about the drain. Our watcher was asking if the drain assembly comes with the kit, which...
The drain assembly does come with the kit. We'll get to it in a second here, but you'll see that there's no glue joints, PVC glue joints on this. So like this is a second floor installation, but whether this was a concrete floor, which this pan is great for because you don't have to cut the whole subfloor or the whole concrete floor off. You only have to notch into it about an inch and a quarter or so. But if this was a second story installation with no access below, we could have actually had our pipe roughed up above the floor and dropped our pan in over it, and then make our final drain connector come up above, and then cut the pipe off with the inside pipe cutter to the level that it needs to be. So one of the things that we've done today is we've used hot water to mix this patch. I should say hot, warm water. The warm water will actually accelerate the drying process of the patch. So if this is your first time doing one, you might want to use lukewarm water or even a cooler water to extend that dry time time. As you do more of them and you become more efficient with them, the warmer the water and the more you whip it when you mix it, the faster the patch will set up.
trowel Gary was talking about earlier. These trowels are set for traditional mud jobs and for the Vim system pans. They can be used on both. The good thing about these trowels, when you're getting into the corner of any of your mud job or the Vim system mud, it goes right in and you can continue your pitch. You're not changing the trowel. So when I'm going into this corner, I'm going straight into the corner and I'm continuing. I'm not having to pull back. It stops you from getting that convect in the corners where standing water would be. The key for this mud, because it is a fast drying, I just want to get the mud where it needs to go. I'm not worried about smoothing it out like a mud job. I'm not trying to get it perfect. As it activates itself, it becomes easier to work with. I can actually mold it and clay it to exactly where I want it to be.
So we just had another question that came in that asked if the adjuster that I showed earlier is included in the kit. Yes, that's all part of the kit. This system is designed, we'll get to it in a minute, for very low profile tile, but we've had some people actually run heated floors into them or do a thicker stone tile on them. We can do higher thread adjusters if needed, so if anybody ever runs across that, just contact us and we'll get you taken care of on that. So you'll notice that we brought our 1/4-inch backer board out a couple inches outside of the shower here. This shower is actually going to have a shower door about here, so we'll have about 4 inches of additional slope outside the shower. The bathroom floor tile will probably come to about here. So that'll be running level, but it'll have a slight positive pitch below it. And probably 8 out of 10 times when you do your bathroom floor tile, that's going to be a thicker thickness than the pan tile inside the shower. So an additional slope will be required when you go to do your shower pan tile. If you go to vimproducts.com and look at our installation video, we detail that process in that video. Our new construction, what's nice about this, because we already put the 1/4-inch backer board piece down here, when tile installers come in to finally tile the bathroom, they've got something to butt their backer board up to already, and the shower pan's already fully waterproofed. All they've got to do is do their board up the wall, and they're ready to start setting tile. So there's no mud job or anything going to be needed on this.
Starting to dry up a little bit, so I'm able to mold it. Clean that off so the 1/4-inch stays true 1/4-inch. Okay, so I'm just going to let this sit up for a little bit until it gets tacky enough where I can actually form it just like a putty or a clay, where it's not going to pull it. The more I work with it when it's wet, the more it's just going to pull and make it more difficult. So in this fact, you can take your time once you get it to this area.
We had another question come in and asked, is Steve just eyeballing this slope? And the answer to that is no, because we put that 1/4-inch sliver all the way around the inside, we picture frame that inside the shower. He's really just doing a straight edge slope from that 1/4-inch onto our pan, so that slope is going to be uniform all the way around. And it's going to ensure that we've got a nice level perimeter area all the way around the inside of the shower. While we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go ahead and show how the drain assembly gets hooked up. So again, in the drain assembly box, we give a neoprene gasket. And you'll notice on here it's beveled on one side and flat on the other. You always want to make sure that this bevel side is up, because that coincides with a lock ring that we supply with the kit that's also beveled. So what ends up happening, when this gets tightened down, it's actually going to mushroom this gasket, and that's what's going to make the seal between our PVC pipe and our drain assembly. So there's no plumbing run to this yet, so all we're simply going to do is put our gasket on this pipe, level with the top of the pipe, and we give a little silicone grease with the kit. We just want to put a little bit of grease on this piece, and what that does is ensures that when this lock ring starts to get tightened, it's actually gliding on that gasket rather than catching and trying to turn the gasket. It helps to push the gasket into place as well. We'll just put a little bit of that on there, take our finger. That's all it takes. So this will give the plumber something when he gets here that he'll be able to attach to from the bottom side. So we're going to drop that in place. We give a little tool here that can aid in pushing this gasket down. Just pushes it down into place. But it also is the tool that tightens this lock ring down. So you just snap this in place. Just push down on it. Get it good and hand tight. Now you can see our gasket and our pipe is watertight to our drain assembly. Our drain assembly with silicone and is watertight to our pan. These little screw holes you see here do not go all the way down through the drain assembly, and that's what will, after we waterproof and do our fabric, that's what's going to allow us to secure this clamping flange to the pan.
Okay, this is starting to dry nice. You can see how that trowel, because I've got an angle coming this way.
Speak up.
I have the angle coming down this way and an angle coming this way. So I can get right on top of that piece of Duroc that Gary's saying, and I'm going to turn it, go right into the corner, and continue. And see how that mud's getting, it's drying faster, so now it's shaping itself. It's a perfect pitch. If I take this up and I put it here, you see there's no gap under there. There's a perfect pitch. That a 1/4 inch is all the way.
talked about the textured surface of the pan earlier for the waterproofing. But another thing it helps with is if you're doing a smaller pan, let's say you're doing a tub replacement, a 60 by 30 pan maybe, the smaller you're cutting this pan towards the drain, the thinner the profile of the pan is going to be. So it's oftentimes where you're going to have to patch onto the pan to give a more gradual slope to the drain in order to keep that level perimeter line. So that's okay. That textured pattern in this patch material will actually lock in, and it's going to create a very strong bond. Steve's probably going to take some of this back off the pan when this starts to dry, but if yours has to have some on it, that's absolutely okay. As the patch begins to dry, you'll see that Steve is holding his trowel more like this on end. He's actually going to start carving that patch material to make sure that it's got a perfect, smooth transition. You don't want ripples or anything in your patch, because when you do your waterproofing in your fabric, it'll actually tempt over those ripples. And the waterproofing will tend to dry and cool puddle underneath that fabric, and it's just going to take a lot longer to dry. So the smoother you can get this, you'll see when Steve's done, this is going to be perfectly smooth. The faster the waterproofing will dry. One thing Steve didn't mention was this trowel. He actually designed this trowel. Over the years of doing these, and I'd say Steve's probably done 350, 400 pans? Probably 350 or 400 Vim systems now. He just noticed over time that getting that trowel, a standard rectangular trowel in that corner, wasn't allowing him to get the pitches that he wanted, because our pan it's a quad pitch from each corner to the drain. So by this allowing it to go right into that corner, it allows us to maintain those pitches. You can do it the other way, it's just a lot more work to do it. So this is an exclusive thing. We're the only ones that have it. We'll be getting it to our distributors. Probably, I would say they'll have stock in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Great tool. And it'll say Vim on it, so you know it's ours. So we're going to give this just a couple minutes to finish drying. And then we'll start cleaning it up and getting ready for waterproofing.
So we're just 50 minutes right now?
Roughly 50 minutes?
Yeah, 50 minutes.
Good fabric.
I've got it pre-cut here, Gary,
Okay.
and I've got this pre-cut here.
So we talked about the fabric. Our kit comes with 6-inch wide fabric that we've cut into these strips. And we also give a 36-inch wide fabric that will be laid down on this pan. What the fabric does is it acts as an anti-fracture and an isolation membrane, so that if there's any movement in the shower whatsoever, that will help compensate for that. So we give you, I think, 75 feet of this 6-inch wide fabric. If you're only waterproofing up, I mean, code only going to require like 6 inches above the floor. We always come up about 18, but we would recommend using it. You're going to have extra fabric. Go ahead and use it in your corners, and you'll notice over time you're not going to have to go back and do your 1-year point up, because that grout's not going to crack in those corners. Now the large fabric, when we do that, when we do our fabrics in these corners, we'll go ahead and do our perimeter seams first. Then we'll do our horizontal seams, and then we're going to do one large sheet on the floor itself. So we'll take that fabric and we'll fold it in half in those seams, so we'll be about 3 inches up the wall and 3 inches out into the pan. When we do our pan fabric, we're just going to overlap that 3-inch piece on the pan itself. You don't have to roll it back up on the wall.
Right now, this is drying pretty well. So what I'm doing is I'm squeezing 90% of the water out of this sponge. And I'm going in a circular motion, and I'm just knocking that down. And it's giving me a perfect feather. So if the tile setter is doing mosaics, he's got a perfect feather with no convex, no concaves, everything's nice and clean. The waterproofing fabric will go on easier. see that little level right there? I'm at the, yeah, right there. And I'm cleaning the corners, making sure that I have a perfect 90-degree angle there. And I don't want to use a lot of water because I don't want to saturate my patch. I want that patch to continue drying. You can almost feel it get a little bit of heat to it.
So we've got a question. Why not do the pan corners, then vertical like shingles of flashing windows? Not sure what that means.
Well, the shingles will be on the wall area. So we're going to do the fabric 6 inches up the wall, and then we're going to continue the waterproofing over that. So that acts like that shingle action. But I think what you're saying is when it goes down onto the floor, why wouldn't you put the pan fabric down first and then almost like a flashing over top of that? When you do this, it all really becomes one system. So when you're putting that liquid waterproofing on there, and you'll see when we do it, it all becomes one system. There's really no areas for that water to puddle or pool in there. So the way that we're doing it, we found, because you can do your perimeter walls first and then be able to work your pan second. If you did your pan first, it'd be harder to get into the shower and do your walls. But you'll see it all blends seamlessly when we're done.
So this sort of show you, it does have its pitch, and it goes right up. There's no convex there. Everything is a perfect, continuous pitch going right around the shower.
Want to show this?
You do.
Show the pitch to the drain.
Yep, let's. So again, we talked about when the tile setter wants to start with his first level. So it's perfectly level. And then you're going to see the pitch in the pan. See how it drops, comes back up.
Right over the drain.
So it doesn't matter if I was doing one on this floor and Gary was doing one on the second floor and Lauren was doing one on the third floor. Every single one of them are going to be exactly the same. So it's great for a project like we're on now, where it's multiple setters. They're not having to correct it. There's no standing water. Every drain is exactly the same. Every pan is exactly the same. So that's pretty much done. So I have a choice. I can just sit back and wait till it completely 100% dries. What I choose to do is go ahead and start waterproofing and doing all my seams. By the time I'm done with that, this should just about be dry, and then I can just finish off the pan and I'm done.
So the Vim Waterproofing kit will come with 2 gallons of liquid waterproofing. Me and Steve and I are contractors, and we designed the system. We know what it's like to get to the job site and forget the paintbrush. So every kit comes with a paintbrush. It comes with latex gloves. Steve's not using them, but
I will when I do this.
he will when he does the pan section. But he's just getting a head start jump on the walls. So we'll go ahead and get that and let that get dry. By the time he gets around to the end of it, the beginning should be just about dry. We've had questions in the past as far as waterproofing up the walls, continuing it. Can you use a different waterproofing product? We don't care. You know, if you want, this is Mop Day North American. If you want to use a Red Guard or Latticrete or above that or whatever, that's totally up to you. The pan system is all inclusive by itself. Whatever you do above that is just additional protection in the shower.
Thin coats, Gary?
Yeah, no, when Steve's putting this on, when we do the whole process, we want thin coats of waterproofing. You don't want to do a real thick coat and think you're going to get away with it with just one coat. The thinner coats will actually dry faster, which will make the project go quicker. If you do thick coats, it can actually flash dry on the top, before the waterproofing is dry underneath if it's too thick. So here we're allowing the air just to get through that waterproofing and do its thing and allow it to dry quickly. So here's a typical corner piece. We basically just took a 6-inch piece of 6-inch fabric and cut it in half. So we'll ultimately end up folding this similar to this in that corner, and that'll be our corner seal. And we also like to pre-seam these, so we'll just lay these down on the floor, just fold them in half. It just helps tucking them into place a little bit easier. So I'll go ahead and get all these prepared for Steve. This liquid waterproofing is also water soluble while it's wet. So when Steve's done waterproofing this today, we'll go ahead and wash that brush out. And we're going to want to do one last final coat when the system dries. We'll go back in and do another coat. So you're getting one base coat before any fabric. Then we'll put another coat on, insert the fabric, put another thin coat on top of that while that's still wet. You always want your fabric to be inserted into wet waterproofing. That system will all dry, and then we can come back, put one final thin coat on the whole system, and we'll be done. Temperature and humidity can be a big factor in the dry time. So if you've got, say, a concrete installation and you're doing it in the middle of the winter and it's real moist, you know, that patch could take a day or even 2 days to dry. But situations like today, it's a hot one here in North Carolina. It's probably 85 degrees, very low humidity. So this patch is going to dry pretty quick today. So it makes for a good install today.
It. Do my verticals. So I'm just going to take a wet and I'm going to come. So a thin wet coat of waterproofing first before I put my tape. Refold it. I'm going to come right to the corner. Now if I'm not touching the bottom, each of these fabrics are going to overlap each other. So it's going to give me almost a triple protection on that corner by the time I'm done. The other thing I do is I dry my brush out and I tap it to make sure that I don't have any bubble or it's perfectly tucked into that corner. And with any liquid waterproofing, that should be done. If it's turned and liquid ends up behind it, it'll dry on the top, but it will not dry behind. Just kind of like if I put the lid back on this container, and then when water hits it, it will re-emulsify. It's just like taking the lid back off the bucket. So you want to make sure that your corners are tucked. And it's really, I mean, you see how fast I'm doing it. It's easy. Basically it. I'll leave that until this pan dries all the way. Coat. We got one. Because it's a 6-foot shower, Duroc's only 5. We got one more here. Huh?
Is that ring with it?
Answer this on here.
Thought you were giving it from my hands.
So we've got a question on what is the cost of the system. We've got a series of distributors all up and down the East Coast, and we're slowly heading west. We're going to get into a little bit of our background and how we started all this and where we're at. If you log onto our website and put in your zip code, that'll give you the name of the closest distributor to you. I can tell you it lists for $14.79, but we would say contact your local distributor, and you can get pricing from them. So I mentioned we're going to talk a little bit about our background. We're just going to try to kill a little time while this patch continues to dry. I'm a plumbing contractor by trade with over 30 years of experience in the trade. Steve's a master tile setter, much older than I am. He's probably got 40 years of experience. So we've worked a lot of jobs together. We've been close friends for a lot of years and worked a lot of jobs together. And we've seen a lot of failed shower systems, and we got talking one day and said, hey, you know what, I think we need to do something better. Liquid waterproofing has been around for a long time, but it really, in my opinion, has been lacking in a lot of showers, even in mud job showers. So we designed the system to incorporate that as a topical waterproofing rather than a waterproofing underneath the mud bed, where water can get through your tile into that mud bed and then may or may not evacuate to the drain. A lot of times when you see mold and mildew in showers, that's because of that water getting into that mud bed and it never really drying out. So once you get that mold and mildew coming up from underneath your tile, it's there to stay. You're not getting rid of it. Where with the Vim system, because it's a topical waterproofing, any waterproofing that gets through this, any water that gets through the tile is going to hit that waterproofing. And because of the pre-slope underneath of it, it's always going to drain to the drain and evacuate through the drain through the series of weep holes that I showed earlier that are always going to stay open and clean. As you can see, the pan's starting to dry out now. It's getting more of a chalky color. As that patch dries, it's going to get warm, and then it's going to get chalky. Once the whole thing is chalky, then we can go ahead and continue our waterproofing. We've got the windows closed in here today because of the guys working outside. We're trying to keep the noise down. There's not a lot of air movement, so it's taking a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but it won't be too much longer with waterproofing it. Again, now if you're doing remodel jobs or anything like that, while this is drying, you could be prepping the bathroom floor, or hopefully you got more room in the house, you could be continuing waterproofing on the walls on the second one. But we'll get this cleaned up and it'll be just a few more minutes. You got anything you want to add? Your background?
I started out in the tile business just about 30 years ago myself. I've been doing tile in New York, California, and resigned back here in Raleigh about 26 years ago. I was still an active tile setter. Still have crews. We're still putting in a lot of systems. Like Gary said before, you know, we really did sit down and come across every challenge as a tile setter when the pan leaks, the first thing we want to do is say, the plumber did it. He put it in, I'm not responsible. And the plumber turns around and says, well, we pulled the pan down and we refolded it. And of course, where the curb is, every tile setter cuts that vinyl pan. So whose fault it is?
No, we say we tested it. And it didn't leak when we tested it. And after that, we can't help what happens. So it was this constant battle back and forth between plumber and tile setters. Everybody in the business knows that battle.
Yeah.
But we feel we've done a good job of bringing these two trades together where they can actually work together. We've got plumbers that install this. We've got tile guys that install it. We've got a lot of teams like Steve and I that, you know, we go out and we work together on them. He'll sell one, we'll plumb it. We'll sell one, he'll tile it.
Yeah.
And we hope that there can be a lot more camaraderie between our two trades rather than the bickering that we've witnessed in past years. So.
It's a very, very easy system. You can see, you know, it's just a little over an hour and the system's done. You know, if it was a regular work day, you know, I might break right now and go get lunch. By the time I came back, it would be dry and be done. Me personally and my crews that work for me, we've got it down to about an hour and a half. Every system we put in is about an hour and a half. And you know, your first system is going to take a little bit longer. It's going to figure out the little tricks. These videos and the other videos that we have on Vim, they show you some of the tricks. Introducing that new trowel is a huge, huge time saver. I've gone on job sites with co-workers of mine and have given them a trowel to try, and 25, 30 years in the business, and they try and steal my trowel. It's a great trowel for this and mud work. It's all the little tricks of, you know, doing your waterproofing, not waiting for this to dry, you know, pre-cutting your things prior to installing. That really helps, so you're not up and down and up and down. You've got everything with you. It's easy. You got a question, Gary?
Yeah, we actually just had a very good question. It was, how do you test the system for inspection? So, you know, there's several different methods. What we found works the best is that if you actually take plumber's putty, so we'll get a 5-pound bucket of plumber's putty, and we'll actually just, once the system's waterproof, we'll come down and just form a dam. And we'll keep it up. Code requires 2 inches of water at the curb. We don't have a curb, so we want to make sure that that putty dam is up high enough to get that 2 inches. Most codes require a minimum, I think it's 15, 20 minutes worth of test time. We've had them sit in for days, over weekends, without any issues. Once the system's waterproofed, it's not going anywhere. We had a cardboard box that we coated with this waterproofing, and it had water in it for 30 days. We had to add more, it was evaporating. So the topical waterproofing is a very, very good type of waterproofing. After the inspection is over, you just simply pull that plumber's putty back up and reuse it on the next one. So that's a very good question.
What would you say are some of the top questions you guys receive regarding the Vim system?
You know, probably the best way I can answer that is we instruct everybody to go to our video first on our website, because that kind of goes through the whole process, and that's everybody from salespeople to installers to do-it-yourselfers, and have them jot down their questions and call us, and we'll go through it with them. Our tech support line is, you know, it's very rarely that we don't immediately have somebody to answer the phone to help somebody out. We've gone over quite a few of them today, but one of them would be, you know, can you mix match the waterproofing? Which I stated earlier, no pan system you want with the waterproofing that comes with the kit. Above that, you can use whatever you want to use.
What size do the pans come in?
What size do the pans come in? The pan is 5 foot by 4 foot and 7/8 of an inch thick. Again, it can be cut at any angle. We didn't talk about this earlier, but the pan comes with little pre-cut lines on it here, so that if I'm going to take 4 inches off, I know I can just come in to my second line with my saw and cut it. I don't have to get my tape out, mark it. That's already there. That's strictly for convenience. and they come in on the pan. When we cut it, the width on this thing, we cut those right off. That's why we had to go back in and do the pre-countersunk holes. But they're strictly for convenience. If this was an angled shower, we can cut it in an angle. It's not going to matter because we're going to make up for those slopes with our patch material and our Durock. You know, we've had questions what's the largest shower we can do. We had a customer just completed one that I think it was 12'9" by 5 foot roughly. And we actually did 2 Vim systems. So we put 2 pans in that 12-foot wide area and had it come up in the center so that the water from one shower wasn't coming into the other, so we met code on that. And it was a his and hers type shower situation with one shower head centrally located over each pan. We will have a concrete install coming up. I think we're going to do another live video installation on that. And that will actually be concrete. It's new construction, so when they poured the concrete, they already recessed it. And it'll be a dual pan system side by side. So that's going to be a challenging one, but we'll be doing that on Facebook Live.
All right, we've got a question. How well does it deal with expansion and contraction? Does it dry hard or somewhat flexible?
Well, the pan dries very hard. Because we're setting it into a latex modified thin set, that thin set acts almost like a gluing material, so it's grabbing the waffle on the back of the pan. And when we marry that to the thin set that we put down on the subfloor, that's creating your chemical bond. But then we're also screwing the perimeter of the pan in. That's creating your mechanical bond. The flexibility comes in the waterproofing and the fabric, so that if there is any bit of movement, that fabric will actually move, so you won't get the cracking in the tile that you can in some types of installations.
That's the other good thing about the fabric in here. When the fabric is coming in, every shower has thermal expansion. So this shower right now might be, with the air conditioner on in a regular house, the tile could be about 68 degrees, very chilly. And then the first thing you do is go in and you turn that hot water on and 110 degrees, and you get a thermal expansion. It's a shock to the system. So with the fabric and the waterproofing, when this comes over everything, that protects from all thermal expansion. So this system can move and allow anything to expand and contract underneath it without affecting the tile. About 4 or 5 years ago, Gary brought this up earlier. What we do now is we take all the seams in the shower, every seam, the corners, vertical, horizontal seams, and we actually use this fabric and the waterproofing because it's already here on the job. It's not, I'm not asking my tile setter, do you have the mesh? Did you do the seams? After the Durock is done, we do all the seams with this, all the corners. And you know, I give our customers do 1 year free point up. Call us up in a year and we'll come back and we'll re-caulk any of the corners, touch up any grout. I haven't had a call back in, I couldn't tell you, 4 years. It stops all that thermal expansion. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, we've got another question. In this shower here, the glass enclosure will rest on pan tiles, not floor tiles. So water coming down off of the glass hits sloped tiles toward the drain. Toward the drain, correct?
All right. Okay, so the other great thing about this system is, and I'm going to get to your question, but the tile has to be set a certain way when you're doing a Vim system to ensure that level entry system. So when this is all done and prepped and everything's ready to go, the first thing that's being done is the main floor is going to be tiled first. So if I have a mosaic tile in here, and the mosaic tile is going to be 1/8 of an inch thick, but out here I'm using a 24 by 24. So of course I'm butterbacking that tile, I'm using the thicker trowel, I'm ensuring that everything is level. So what I could end up with is that tile, I'm going to figure out where I'm going to stop. If this is where I want to stop my tile, and the shower door is going to come down on this side of the floor tile, so my pan tile is going to exceed about 1/2 inch, 3/4. I can even go 1 inch if I want, past where the glass is going to go. So that 20 by 20 tile now is going to be a lot thicker because I've ensured it's all flat, everything's consistently even, level. Now I'm going to put my little 1/4 inch mosaic tile. Well, I'm too high here. So that's why I want to make sure this floor is done first. Then in our video, it shows, it's called a second pitch. And the second pitch, all that is the same material that we used here, that patching compound. I mix up a little bit of patching compound. I would use a stick. I'll just show you with this. I would use a stick and I would lay the tile down that's going to go here, and I'd mark the side, and I call that my little gidget. And I'll notch it out, the thickness of the pan tile. And I notch that out, and I add a little bit for a V-notch trowel. I'll put that compound down, and then I just skim it from my tile back into the pan. And I'll go straight across. And it's going to create a perfect pitch, a ramp that's going to allow that tile, when I put the new mosaic down, that's going to come right back up, and it's going to marry right to that tile, and it's going to be a perfect pitch. After I put that compound back down, the patch, I just want to take a little bit of waterproofing and just go over it. I don't need to do the fabric, just the waterproofing. It's going to dry in like 2 minutes, and then I can just knock it out. Does that answer your question?
One of the other questions we had was, what are some of the more popular questions? And while Steve was talking, I thought of a couple. We get asked all the time, are we going to offer a linear drain system? There's nothing in our immediate time frame that we're going to offer anything like that. And the reason being, the whole basis of our system is we don't have to notch or lower the floor system below the shower because we're only 7/8 of an inch thick. Well, we're only 7/8 of an inch thick because we have a quad pitch from our corners to our drain. So if you're going, let's say this is a 6 foot wide shower, and I've got a linear end drain down here, my slope, 1/4 of an inch per foot, which is required by code, over 6 feet, that's going to be 1.5 inches of slope all by itself. So if we've got 1.5 inches of slope coming this way, there's no way we're going to have our bathroom floor tile out here and have it be able to come in and have positive slope into the drain. It's going to be higher. The pan tile is going to end up being higher than our floor tile in our bathroom. Now you can do it. You could do a linear drain in the back, and we're certainly not trying to say anything ill about linear drains. They have their purpose. You can do it towards the back, but now you've got a slope, you know, say in the 3.5, 4 foot wide shower, you get a 1 inch slope going one way, and all that water is going towards that wall. And you know, my plumbing background says I don't like water going all one way. I would much rather have it coming to the center of the shower. If we put the linear drain towards the door entrance, now you've got water that's constantly going to be running towards the outside of the shower, which is no good. So right now, we really enjoy the center drain installation. We've done a lot of tub replacements where we'll actually use the curved shower rod. So what we'll do with something like that, the curved shower rod will add 6 inches to the depth of a shower opening or a tub opening. So if I've got a 30-inch opening and I'm using a curved shower curtain rod, I'm adding 6 inches in the center to that shower. And anybody that's ever been showered in a hotel tub with a curved rod knows that that curved rod makes a huge difference inside that shower. And then what we'll do is we'll take that rod, after we lay the tile on our bathroom floor, we'll take that rod and lay it down on that bathroom floor tile, and we'll transcribe that curvature of that rod, and then go back with a diamond blade and go with our grinder and go ahead and cut that curvature out. And then when our pan tile comes up, it'll follow that same curvature, so that when the curtain comes down, it's following that same curvature. And it just takes a 30-inch deep tub and makes it much more enjoyable for showering. So we're getting there. You can see that the color of the patch is starting to change pretty good. We've got just a few more minutes of dry time on this. It's nice and warm to the touch. You see it's dry back here. Nice and warm. Still a little cool here. But we don't have too much longer. We've got time on this one, so we're probably going to go a little premature on it before this is 100% dry. This isn't going to get tested for probably 2 weeks. We certainly don't recommend this, but just for the video, we're going to go ahead and keep rolling with it and get it waterproofed. So we'll get this cleaned up, and I think we're probably just about ready to go, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, take one.
So we actually had a question yesterday from a customer regarding if you waterproof over the patch before it is completely dry, will it be able to completely dry, and how long will it take?
Well, it depends on how dry that patch is. This is just minutes away. It's starting to turn here. I mean, we're literally minutes away. By the time we get ready here, it's going to be dry enough. If there's still a lot of moisture in that patch, what can happen is your waterproofing will dry on the surface and it won't dry on the bottom side because there's nothing for it to dry against. It's still moist underneath. So that when you go to do your water test, you may actually get some bubbling in your waterproofing. We've had it happen a couple of times where customers have done that, no leaks, but it just looks like almost like a blister in the waterproofing. Then you've got to drain it out, scrape the blister off, dry it, and recoat it with waterproofing. So it just adds to the time. So luckily we're open underneath here. We got a garage underneath us, a new construction. This will have plenty of time to dry out. So we'll be fine on this one.
Okay. So one of the key things to waterproofing is you do not want anything on your shower pan. So I always keep a clean brush. And I'll come through and I'll make sure all those little tiny pebbles are off my pan. If there's one left, I'll show you a trick to get it out, but I try to get all those little pebbles off, any bumps of dry compound, I try and get it all off. Okay. So again, this is almost dry. So now I can come back in and hit all my corners. Once I get my waterproofing on here, I kind of want to like mop it because I want it to grab that patch. I want to make sure that I'm in all that dry area of the patch. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the wall. I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to go back to where I started from. And I'm making sure it's mopped in. Then I'm going to go back to where I started. You can see it's almost dry. Now I'm going to take, just like I did these seams, nice, clean, even, thin coat. I'm going to get right to the corner. I'm just always start in the center. Always make sure I'm tucked in with my fingers, walk from the center, and push to the edges. Again, push it up. Now see how that bubbled right there? It's a little bit of a bubble. All I'm going to do is take my knife, and I'm just going to scribe that and let them overlap each other. Using my brush, tucking it again. And thin coat over it. Do my corner again. And it really doesn't matter if I want to do my back end, my corner first, or this side first. It doesn't matter. each time I'm applying the fabric, I'm always putting a thin coat. Putting it in, tuck in the corner. I use my brush, and I'm making sure I tuck it here, back underneath, back over. See, the brush is doing all the work for me. I'm not fighting with it, I'm not struggling it. That's it, I got a perfect corner.
You doing 2 pieces in the back?
Yes.
Steven?
The back run is a long run, so to try and run one piece back there, it's not important. As long as I'm overlapping my fabrics, it's easier for me to handle a smaller piece. Again, I'm going all the way to the corner, right into the corner, coming to the center, pushing one way, pushing back. Top, making sure I'm tucked. And a thin coat. See, so that corner now has 3 different fabrics covering that corner.
3 different waterproofing.
Yeah. Waterproofing with the fabric, yeah. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm going to show you some here. Underneath my fabric, I realize there's a little pebble underneath there. So I can either pull it all back up, or I can just take it and cut next to it, lift it, pull the pebble out. Just waterproof over. That's it. Now, since I'm here, before I start my pan, it's dry. Give it another coat.
So as far as the waterproofing goes on the walls, you know, we give a brush with the kit. We want the brush to be used because it actually, we feel you have to actually work it to get it in. We get a lot of people asking you use a roller on it. If you want to roll the walls, that's perfectly fine, but for our pan system, our shower system, use the brush that we give you. You'll see when Steve starts to do the waterproofing on the pan itself, he's going to use a mopping circular motion. So all this little bit of dust that you see on the pan stuff, he's actually kind of working that right into the waterproofing, making it all part of the system. Steve actually does these so fast that we've told him that he needs to slow it down today. Remember, Steve?
I'm going slow.
Because it actually looks like the video has been sped up.
Okay.
So now when he does the waterproofing, he's going to go ahead and start from the back and kind of work his way forward, and he's going to waterproof an area just large enough for the first piece of fabric to work the waterproofing just larger of an area than the fabric that we're putting down. So we just had another question come in, somebody that's just kind of got on board with the video. And they asked, can you use Curdy board and Curdy fabric? This is something we're looking into. We just had a big discussion about it yesterday. We haven't done any testing with it. Our system is fully code approved, so we had to take the system, send it for approval from a third-party testing agency. It was sent as a kit, so that's what's been approved. What we're looking at now is, being that the Curdy fabric is an approved waterproofing, it should be able to be put over our system. We just want to make sure that the bond that we get, like right now, we know the waterproofing and the fabric that we use, we get a very good chemical bond. We haven't personally done any tests, but we do have some installers that are doing that type of installation. And the response we're getting back is that it makes a great chemical bond. So that's something that we will be looking into here shortly.
Okay. This is something that a lot of people always ask. How do I get this fabric down without it bubbling? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fabric and I'm just going to kind of drop it where I want it to go. Just throw it out there. Then I'm going to adjust it so it comes to the back wall. So I'm not overlapping that back wall. Once I get it to that, I start with the center. Center is perfect. I'm going to pull the fabric back, just like wallpaper, and I'm going to run it with my hands tight. I'm going to pull it back this way, and run it tight.
Even more waterproofing over the front.
Yeah. You see how that waterproofing is coming right through, and I have no bubbles. No bubbles. I'm going to come back up. Run it right
You'll also notice as Steve's running his hand across it, that fabric is actually absorbing that waterproofing. That's what you want. You want it to adhere to it, so it's actually grabbing that fabric, so we know we're getting a good bond. If at any time you see that you're not, like in the front here, he didn't have enough waterproofing, he's just going to fold the fabric back and throw a little waterproofing under it. So we had a technical question. Someone called in the other day and was asking about the fabric and how to get it down without it having any type of tinning or bubbles or that type of thing in it. And I was trying to explain this process, and they were convinced that it couldn't be done. So this is the way that Steve just showed you. If you want that fabric to lay flat, the way he showed you going around circular around the drain and then working it to each corner is the absolute best way to get it down in there, to get it where it's going to be laying without any bubbles in it. Now Steve's actually cut his fabric a little bit long here. You don't have to do that. You can do it to where it just lays down flat on the pan surface. He's got it rolling up the wall again. It makes absolutely no difference either way. As long as your two fabrics are overlapping each other, you're fine. If you're more comfortable rolling it back up the wall like Steve did, that's absolutely fine too. And you'll see as he's doing it how the waterproofing actually ties the two fabrics together, so there's really no seams there.
Again, that mopping effect. I want to make sure that waterproofing is absorbed into all that fabric.
So we had another question come in. Do you offer any hands-on training? We do offer extensive training at our facility. If somebody wants to come in and do a one-on-one, we don't really go out too far out of the Carolinas. We do have some sales reps that can offer some guidance through our distributors, but with the advent of our installation video, we feel that does a very, very good job, and we're doing things like this today of explaining how the system goes in. The gentleman that had commented said he's not good at doing mud jobs. Well, with this system, it's pre-sloped, so that takes that equation out of play. It's already pre-sloped for you, so as long as the pan is going in level, you've got that 1/4 of an inch per foot pitch already built into the pan.
I'm just going to apply a very thin, even coat now. I've got it all mopped in. I just want an even, thin coat. So to finish it off, I'm just going to finish fresh waterproofing. Same thing, I'm just going to get it to the edge.
I think it will.
Pull it out past that drain, Steve, because I don't want to. I'm going to have to cut that to show that clamping flange. Pull it out farther past it. Keep going. Keep going.
Start in the center and work to the left. Lift it.
Lauren. My car. My keys are over there though.
Steve, did you talk about using that circular motion to work that waterproofing in?
Yeah.
We have a question. Can you run Ditra to it and fabric over 2 inches and have no glass?
So if I was running Dieter out here, say the question again?
It says, can you run Ditra to it and fabric over 2 inches and have no glass?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That doesn't fit.
That's it. Then I'll just trim off this. After it dries, I'll just trim all the excess off. So Gary, you're gonna do that right now? Okay. Excuse me.
Now, in the normal process, we would let this whole thing dry, and we would coat it one more time, but we're running low on battery and time, so I'm going to go ahead and show how the clamping flange gets installed. Just assume that the system's dry. So this is the second part of the drain assembly, the clamping flange. We want the fabric to be under this, so what we're going to do is we're just going to feel in here to where the edge of our drain is. All right? We're going to take our razor knife, find it, and just go in a circular motion around it and cut this out.
You want a rag there?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Normally this wouldn't be wet, so this wouldn't be an issue. We want to get this out of here. Now, if we can get a close-up of this, you'll see that our drain pipe doesn't come up above our drain here. If the plumbing pipe had been stubbed up through the floor originally and the pan set over that, if we were to use an inside pipe cutter, we're going to want to cut that pipe right to the top of this lock ring. We don't want to leave it above it or water's going to puddle in here. But this one we're going to be perfectly fine. So now we've got our waterproofing and our fabric down. We just take our clamping flange, turn it until it engages, drop it into place, and you'll see it actually pushes down. So now any water that goes onto any water that gets through our tile or our pre-slope is going to drain out these channels here.
That's done after it's dried.
Yeah, after it's dried, yeah.
He's just going a little fast right now just to show you guys, but this is done after the second coat is done. After the second coat is done and it's dry, then this is applied. And another key thing, that does not get silicone. It goes in dry, no silicone.
So this would be installed the second day after you've come back and done a second coat. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. Now, depending on, again, what the temperature is and the humidity, you know, if we started this at 8 o'clock, by 10 o'clock, we're going to be done. And, you know, towards the end of the day, we can put our final coat on it, and that final coat's going to dry quick, so we could theoretically have this all done in one day. It's wet now, so I'm just going to show, you know, once you get the clamping flange down in there, again, those screw holes are going to be lined up for you, so you don't have to worry about the screws being able to get to their grommets. So you just basically take the screw, push it down through, right down through the fabric, and again, just hand tight on this. I'm not going to do them all because I'm going to pull that back off. And then what you do is just take, when you're ready to start tiling, you thread in your adjuster, and we give you a dummy strainer. This stays in during the whole construction, tile, grouting, everything. This is what you want to slope your pan tile to. And you can tell if I go all the way down with this, that will allow for a very low profile tile. Again, it has to be in. If you don't have that in, and you slope to here, your slope's not going to be right, because this actually sets up just a little bit, about 1/16 of an inch above here. So just as protection, leave that in, slope your tile to that, grout your tile, then that can be pulled out, and your finish strainer then goes in after that. That's the very last step, so you're not having to grout over your finished strainer it's going in. There's no damage to it, no scratches or anything. So if we don't have any more questions, we appreciate everybody that's contributed today. If you have any questions and you just didn't feel like sending them to us, but you want to call us, feel free to call us. We'll be happy to talk to you about it. We hope you enjoyed the presentation, and hopefully we'll see you in a few more weeks on a concrete install.
Have a great day.
Oh, let's take one last thing. Notice the time.
12:53.
We started at 11:05, so we're roughly about an hour and 45 minutes,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. So we appreciate it, guys.
Have a great one. Looking forward to work with you guys. Take care.